All right, let's now try to get ourselves organized as we get ready to go through the rest of this semester. This is a little longer than I would normally do, but this one takes some time, so I want to make sure I get it right and that you understand what we're doing. So, first thing, go to your desktop, right click, new folder, and you'll see where it says untitled folder here. We want to rename that, and then double click fall classes. Obviously, this is just for you on your desktop. All right, we have a folder now called Fall 2024 Classes. Let's go to it. Let's open it up. And you're going to see a blank slate like this. So first thing we want to do is we want to create a new folder for one of our classes. Let's call it Music. And then we need another one. We'll call it Management. Another one maybe Art. If you have an art class, let's see. Maybe you have a math class. All right. And then finally, if you're taking 15 hours, maybe you have a psychology class. Okay. Now, you have a folder for each one of your classes under the Fall 2024 classes. So from here, we're going to now proceed to creating your PowerPoints. We're going to go from our folder, our Fall 2024 folder, we're going to tap on PowerPoint, and then up at the top, you want to go to File, New Presentation. So it'll give you a new PowerPoint slide. It'll usually come out something like this. Now, we don't need to have a chapter setting, although you can do it if you like. Let's call it, say we're in week, back half of the semester. So let's say we're going to be looking at chapter 12 in music today. And so I like to do that. And then we right click and insert a new slide, which will then give us this in a header. So what we want to do here, we want to go to the back of the textbook in chapter 12 in the music class that we have. And this is for any class that you'll have. You'll go through this exercise. The first blank slide that you want to have, you want to call it themes. And what you do is you go to the back of the chapter and you look for a section that covers summary or reflection or details related to the particular chapter. Again, this is in the back of the book. And in the back of pretty much all textbooks, they have something that summarizes what you just read. What you want to put on this slide is what the book says the themes were. So I'm just going to use an example. Let's call it symbols and the theory of music as an example. Then the next slide could be percussion, or next theme, percussion and their uses. And then finally, drums and how they are implemented. Okay, so that's the three themes that are, again, in the back of the textbook. Now, this is specific language that the book uses for those themes, and I'll show you why that we do it that way here in a minute. Now, the next slide. These are themes as well in your own words, though. Now, the reason I say that is now it's time for you to be able to take the information you're learning in these books and transmit it to words that you can understand them. So let's take a look at the first one. It was symbols in music theory, or theory of music. What would be a phrase you would use for something like that? Say symbolic theory, something like that. That means something to you. Spell theory there. It means something to you, and then you can apply it. Same thing here. Percussion and their uses. What's a drum for? Or what's percussion for anyway? Right? Just something that makes sense to you. Drums, and how are they implemented? We could say, how's the drumming? All right. So now we have the themes from the chapter, from the textbook. Now we have the themes in our own words. What's the next thing we want to do? Well, the next thing we want to do is you want to read the chapter. Go through and read the chapter. Once you've done that, now let's create a new slide. And this slide is called questions. Now, why do we do this? Well, after you've read the chapter, it's important that you can then think about what you read. You've got the themes going in. Now you've read the chapter. Now, what kind of questions do you have that you don't necessarily think have been answered in full based on what you read? They could be about anything related to the chapter. It's like, how does a drum work? Again, that's something that may have been in the chapter. Why why does music break down in parts like this, right? So when you get to the end of the chapter, you should have 3 to 5 of these just as information. Now, what's the next thing? The reason you have these questions is when the professor does their lecturing on chapter 12, you will, number one, have an idea of what you're going to be reading or what you're going to be hearing about. Number two, you've kind of already thought about those in your own words. And number three, when the time comes, and it almost always does in these classes, where the professor says, are there any questions? You have a list of questions here. Now, I can tell you from a professor's perspective, if someone already knows what we're talking about, I notice that as a teacher, as do many other professors as well. So you're going to set yourself apart in the classroom if you're able to ask questions about the topic. It obviously shows that you're prepared for class. I can assure you, professors are much more forgiving, if you want to use that word, for students who are participating, who are engaged, and who are ready for the class when it starts. And they'll be more applicable, more easily to approach them if you ever need them in the future. Now, the last section that you want to do is the new slide. This is the last section. And this one, all I want you to put on this page is notes, nothing else. And that's not to be done in prep. That's not to be used. There's nothing else I want you to put there. Those notes are for the professor's lecture. Then when they go through the lecture of the coursework itself on the chapter that they're talking about, here you're going to take notes for things that they highlight, things that they're interested in. You'll find as you sit through classes and you get farther along in your academic journey, you'll find that a lot of this is actual tables and lists. You'll see throughout the chapter where they'll stop and focus on particular tables and lists. And when that happens, you put them here. Now, later on in our study here, we're going to actually go back through these chapters and we're going to look for these tables or lists. But as of right now, I don't want you to do that because some of these tables and lists they will ignore. They will tell you don't focus on this in their lecture. You can ask some of those questions, right? You can think about that. If you pass some of those questions, we can just go back and say, which tables should we be focusing on based on this chapter? That's a question you can ask the professor at some point when they ask for, are there any questions? But here, having this blank slate, if you will give you the opportunity to take notes as they're telling them. So I hope that works. Keep this. Now we want to save this. Save as. Now remember, we have our folder for music. We want to save as music chapter 12. And we want to go to our desktop and then we want to find our fall 2024 classes, right? We have English, math, music, ops, and sales. So let's go to our music folder and then we're going to click sales. Now let's go back over. We can close that down. We can now close that. We don't need to have that open anymore. We've done everything we needed to do. We go back over to our folders. Well, let's get all the way out and come back in just to show you can see it. All right, I'm ready to I've got class this morning. My music class is at 9 o'clock. Let's open up our folder. When I walk into class, I take my computer out and I click on Fall 2024 classes. There's music. Let me double click there. We're talking about chapter 12. Let me pull that up. And guess what? We have all the notes that we'd already taken. We already have them in chapter 12. And we're ready for the lecture because we already have some idea what's happening. We also have questions already developed for the discussion itself. So I want you to do this with one chapter each for all the classes that you have this week. And then load those up in the quiz section of this chapter, and you will be well on your way to being prepared for the rest of the semester. I hope this helps.